All right, so welcome everyone. We are live in Zoom and we're also live streaming on Facebook now. To quickly introduce myself, I'm Chris Burry. I'm the co-CEO of the group out in Valley known as US. For the last 10 years, US Mac has been working all over the world being sort of a resource for training. We provide global connectivity, training, coaching, business development support. Founders that have ambition not just to grow in their local community, but to be able to grow in the world. With well over 2,000 startups in some capacity. And it's a pleasure to be here supporting the innovation ecosystem in sort of Eurasia. The organizer of this event is StrategEast, which is a nonprofit out of the but it's super active in Eurasia, helping promote the innovation economy, the digital economy, to sort of help countries transform into a knowledge-driven sort of economic model. We are joined today by 3 individuals with deep knowledge from different countries in the region. And what I want to do is to start off by having them, I don't know, probably spend 5 minutes each, 7 minutes each introducing themselves, their own personal background, and what they're working on in their local ecosystem, and sort of some starting sort of general observations on the state of things. So Vusal, Zoom puts you in the upper left-hand corner, so I'm going to start with you. The Zoom lottery, you're the winner. So
I'm the winner. Yes, thank you so much, Chris, for the introduction. My name is Vusal Karimli. I'm a managing director at SupVC. SupVC is the first startup accelerator started in Azerbaijan. So we were founded back in 2015. In the last 5.5 years, we've been working with several startups, dozens of startups actually, and helped them to scale into a global market. We also have an angel club where they do invest in local startups, and not just on local startups, but they also do have portfolio companies in various countries, including Silicon Valley, Ukraine, Turkey, United Arab Emirates. And the actual, back in 2020, we decided to merge our investment part and the accelerator. So that's how we rebranded ourselves as SupVC. So we were Sub-Accelerator back then, but now we are SupVC. My personal background, I have a bachelor's degree in international relations. And I studied project management at the George Washington University. And I started 2 different startups and I failed in both of them, and decided to join this movement in Azerbaijan that started back in 2010. So many people decided to join and start their own businesses. I spent like 2 years in the United States where I studied as an exchange student. I also lived in Spain for 3 years, from 2014 to 2017, where I was kind of involved in their own local startup ecosystem and tried to learn about, what makes those ecosystems successful. And moved back to Baku in 2017, and since 2017 I've been with SupVC, and I've been working with local startups. So I also help startups as a mentor in their growth, hacking growth-related issues, and that's it. That's it from my side so far. Thank you so much, Chris.
So thank you, Pavel. Can you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Hi, my name is Pavel, and I'm working in a governmental organization which is in charge of digital development in a large country as Kazakhstan. Previously, I was founder of first private business incubator and the seed fund in order to support promising and high growth potential entrepreneurs not only in Kazakhstan but in the whole Central Asia. And then I've been invited by the government to kind of coordinate the works on and emphasize government to work on developing innovative ecosystem. So since 2018, I joined the National Infocommunication Holding Zerde, which is kind of umbrella organization for a number of development institutions like International Technopark Astana Hub, which combines not only like soft skill program and hardcore kind of business support, but also tax incentives and the special jurisdiction under the British common law, which we have here in Astana International Financial Center, which we believe creates the brilliant opportunity for companies from across the region to set up the viable presence for scaling up then globally. So today my work pretty much focused on investment activities of our holding company, because we are developing the largest eGov platform in the region. Kazakhstan is number 10 out of 198 countries in terms of online governmental services. So and of course we believe we are not such developed in terms of kind of export, but we are pretty good in GovTech as a specialization. So we're pretty much keen of the regional partnerships, and thank you for the opportunity discussing the interesting topic with you.
Thank you so much. Anna, can you do an introduction also? And I gather you perhaps have some slides.
No, if everybody goes by just talking, let's keep the talking.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Anna Chirita. I'm the Strategic Projects Director of the National Association of ICT Companies, and at the same time I'm managing one of the biggest public-private partnerships projects in Moldova called Tekwill. And at the same time, I'm managing another quite big project, which is called EU for Moldova Startup City Tekwill. My experience, I have over 11, 12 years of experience in the area of ICT, starting with building up the Association of ICT Companies back from 2009, and then building one of the biggest ICT excellence centers in Moldova and in general in the region. It's 5,000 square meters, over 77,000 beneficiaries in the last 4 years. 3 days ago, we celebrated our anniversary, and overall, together with all our partners, we have more than 400,000 beneficiaries in Moldova, which is every 10th person or every 7th person in Moldova probably benefited of something in terms of the Tekwill project. We focus on entrepreneurship and education. Education meaning building providing world-class education towards the people of Moldova who can serve for the ICT industry. And when we talk about the entrepreneurship, because our discussion is on the startups and ecosystem and stuff like that, we are the main driver for the ecosystem development. We have a program launched called Startup Moldova, aiming to support SMEs get digital, aiming to support startups get international, and aiming to support sectors also get digital. We have a bunch of community initiatives that we promote within the area. And we have acceleration programs, investment programs, initiatives coming to support the IT industry in this sense. So on the education side, we have multiple programs as well, and we try to introduce the educational component or entrepreneurship component as well into the school. So one of the biggest programs we run is 234 schools connected to Tekwill in every school program, where kids learn the professions of the future. Shortly about Tekwill and about the startup ecosystem. Happy to answer any kind of other questions that might arise. So looking forward to the panel. Thank you.
Great. really happy that you're here. I'm happy all of you are here. You know, just a little bit more about me. Throughout my career, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have more companies than I really want to talk about. You know, I've had several that, as we say in Silicon Valley, we don't talk about failure. We talk about, well, that didn't work, right? You know, hey, Chris, how's that company going? It didn't really work. So what are you doing now, right? Had 3 exits, and for the last 10 years have had the privilege of working with founders in over 40 countries around the globe. And the background that you see is actually the terrace at a hotel in Tbilisi, Georgia. And I've actually just recently moved here in order to support entrepreneurship here in Georgia, but across the region. So it's really exciting and interesting for me personally to learn more, you know, from all of you in terms of what is, you know, what's going on. I'm gonna start with you. There were a couple things that you talked about. I was, you know, I'm really curious. You seem like you guys you have your hands in a lot of different things, but I'm curious, as you look at the challenges facing entrepreneurs and founders in your country, what do you think are really sort of the obstacles right now? You know, you've been moving through, but if you were to name the top 2 or 3 things that you think are you know, holding the ecosystem back, holding the founders back, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Chris. Indeed, we actually also did a report back in 2019 and 20 on what are the startups' needs in Moldova. Being a small country, we are, some of the top things are, number 1, probably the lack of culture of doing international business. We don't have a lot of startups. We cannot say that we have super big unicorns, although we would like to have it. We have only one Moldovan company that actually reached 2 billion valuation on the US market, but that was starting 2000 or so. So there are very few that actually do that. Number 2 is access to sufficiently well-prepared talent and I think this is relevant everywhere. And number 3 is access to existing resources. But again, this is kind of really linked to also the funnel. So number 1, we're sufficiently well-developed entrepreneurial culture because it's a chicken and egg thing. If you have funds, the funds look into what they can invest into. If you don't have entrepreneurs, it's questionable whether they can invest. If you don't have it, you complain that you don't have it. So it's a matter of how do we build sufficiently prepared startups for the international market, because when we talk about startups, we don't talk about local ecosystems. It's just a matter of getting integrated into the global component, and then this is where we do. So it's talent, it's culture, and it's investment mechanisms, I would say.
Talent, culture, and investment mechanisms. Pavel, from your perspective, you're on mute. I'm not sure he can join us at the moment. Vusal, could you jump in and share your perspective from Azerbaijan?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Chris. Actually, while listening to Anna, I see that there's a lot of commonalities, similarities in this ecosystems, most probably because we share like a common history together. But when it comes to Azerbaijan is like it's larger than Moldova, but in general, it's also a small country for a startup with a population of 10 million people. It's an oil-rich country, so in terms of money, it's not really a problem. But some different kind of problems that exist in the ecosystem create some kind of obstacle for people to actually join this ecosystem and to create their own startups. So one of the challenges that I see is the human resources challenge. I mean, the founders, founders with the right mindset, with the global vision, who are actually here to start their own businesses. So that's the type of people that we lack in Azerbaijan. Even though the entrepreneurship has been like the traditional entrepreneurship has been like in genes of this nation for centuries. But when it comes to tech entrepreneurship and creating businesses that can scale globally, unfortunately, we don't really have too many success stories locally. There are Azerbaijanis living in Silicon Valley that did like exits. There are Azerbaijanis who are really successful in London, in different cities around the world. But when it comes to local ecosystem, we have few companies that are doing really great. But unfortunately, we don't really have like a large success story that can become some kind of role model for others to see. And then even though there is capital, but we have some problems with the regulations that really don't let VC companies to move into Azerbaijan and to start investing in startups. So I know that there's a lot of work going on right now. People are trying to fix this, but the current reality is that regulations are another problem that we have. And of course, also one of the other things is the strong bonds with different startup hubs. So I think that's also something that we are missing. I know that there's a lot of things going on in Kazakhstan. There's a lot of things going in Georgia. So it would be really great if there would be some kind of like a connection between these two, like between these ecosystems where not only startups, but also maybe investors can learn from each other or can invest in different startups. So I think that's something that we can learn from each other, and I think we need to build more bridges and learn from each other.
Yeah, there's actually some really interesting work that's done by a group out of San Francisco called the Startup Genome Report. And one of the findings from a couple of years ago, I don't remember which year it was, but they started actually looking at the impact of global connectivity and how that impacts overall success of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And their research shows that the global connectivity piece is actually super important, right? It's the first, a lot of people have been talking about the importance of building bridges between ecosystems for a long time. But it's the first research that I saw that actually was like, okay, can we actually quantify the impact? Can we actually quantify the impact of this? So I tend to agree with you on not just connect to London, connect to New York, connect to wherever, but to really create this sort of set of globally connected ecosystems. Pavel, can you jump in and share a little bit about what you think is sort of the big challenges facing founders in your part of the world?
Thank you, Chris. And I believe that I will refer to the previous comment on the globalization, and we've been part of the Startup Genome kind of research for the last couple of years as well. So yeah, the numbers are very important. So when we have the first projects out of the country for the global markets, it gives a huge kind of multiple effects on the culture first. So when we see the good experience and the good examples of raising companies getting to IPO or like raising the large amount of money from VC funds, it shows kind of proves that the entrepreneurs for any part of the world can create the brilliant companies. And just recently, I could not tell you that the Kazakh entrepreneurs facing real problems, because we, I believe, overcome that major of problems in the last couple of years, specifically focusing on high-tech entrepreneurs and their needs. So by creating the legal infrastructure, by creating tax incentive and so on and so forth. And now it leads us to the more and more like investments from international VCs. And of course, we've seen some major deals from the region related to Kaspi Bank. So it's the digital ecosystem and a fintech platform that's happened to be bank before, but now it's leading and most kind of effective IPOs on London Stock Exchanges this year. The valuation of the Kaspi Bank that operates for today only in Kazakhstan is already over 11 billion US dollars. So, and it proves us that's the nice good tech companies can be born everywhere. I know good examples of TBC Bank from Georgia that a year ago joined Uzbek market, that now they pioneering a lot of fintech projects in this growing economy. So in every aspect of like talking with entrepreneurs, I would love to focus more on opportunities rather than problem that we are facing, because for many years I was heard that Kazakhstan is a very small market, and yeah, nobody interested in 18 million people. Yeah, because why don't go to Indonesia with like almost 200 million and to do a business there? But just in 1 year, we showed that within a local market of Kazakhstan with 18 million people, you still can build the company with valuation of 11 billion. So that's an amazing kind of story. That's nothing really hard in the region. And I heard a lot of many times that Central Asia is kind of lost the frontier market. Yeah, because Southeast Asia already discovered, booming, and so on and so forth. And Central Asia, it's kind of last step, yeah, just to discover the new market. And even though I mean we have such a brilliant companies in frontier market, yeah. So why can tell else?
Thank you very much, Pavel. Anna, when you were talking earlier, you were talking about sort of, it seemed like sort of instilling sort of a more entrepreneurial culture. You were talking about being down, like doing some stuff at the high school level. You know, 262, I think you said, or whatever.
234.
234. A lot of high schools, right?
Yes, it's a lot.
Can you share a little bit more about how you're thinking about that? Because that's to me actually a place where I have a lot of passion.
Yes, it's also one of my passions, and I can tell you how it started to actually go beyond just regular acceleration programs or entrepreneurial academies or something like that. We have multiple directions that we launched, such as training programs for not elderly, but for 18 plus, let's say, adults. And we were seeing that there is not sufficient well-prepared capacity coming from beyond. So we started moving down by age and developing programs for youth or teenagers. That was also not enough. We went even more down. So we have technical programs that we launched starting age of 4 and 5. However, this is not about entrepreneurship. This is about the technical skills.
Sure.
But which are also really important. But we saw that it's really important to have a systemic approach where we actually where they actually learn from the schools to do problem-based learning and to work in teams and to provide creativity and things like that, which are not just executing some of the things, you know, do that or do that or do that. So this is where we came into developing technical elements, or we call it the future skills, or the skills of the future. We have 6 programs currently. Actually, we have 8 programs currently approved for the school level. 3 of them have been implemented last year, 3 more implemented this year. We're talking about mobile applications, programming, graphic design, entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence, artificial intelligence, and I think there are 2 more programming. Security, I guess, introduction to security, and something else. So it's a combination of skills that are requiring to prepare a new generation of people who are thinking differently than just doing A or B or C. And they're also integrated with the global market, because when we talk about some of the elements, we're providing some Cisco elements or some Intel curricula, or some I don't know, when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's in partnership with specific international organizations. You've mentioned about Startup Genome. We also joined Startup Genome last year in 2020. I can share it's a very nice experience, and they're doing quite a nice pool of data, very well organized, and using absolutely different data that you would think of. And it puts you on the global map. So we are going down just because we think they are the generation. However, that doesn't stop there. We're doing programs for the other people as well, because you cannot do one or another. You have to put your eggs in different baskets in order to make sure that you get that one genius idea maybe in time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spend a lot of time around the world, working with governments on designing programs and so forth. And the analogy I often use, you just sort of touched on it, is you can't solve one problem at a time. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You have to be solving all of it all at one time. You can't just solve the coding piece. You have to be able to solve the creativity piece at the same time. It's a very complex, multifaceted problem that you're trying to solve. I will, just as an aside in this conversation, there's a really fascinating school in Silicon Valley that's called the Design Tech High School, that is in Redwood City, and it's primarily sponsored actually by Oracle. And Oracle was even worried about, are we actually producing out of the schools the kinds of students that ultimately can be successful as entrepreneurs and successful in sort of the innovation economy. And you might just want to take a look at that, because they're doing some really interesting stuff that is in line with what you're up to in that high school piece. So Vusal, you had also, when you were talking, you had highlighted sort of the human capital equation. Can you share a little bit more about sort of where you think, Azerbaijan is, and, the kinds of things that you're thinking about and that you see going on?
Yes, definitely. Actually, as I mentioned before, Azerbaijan is an oil-rich country, but we all know that oil is not the future. So as a government, Azerbaijan has a priority in turning what's called turning the oil capital to human capital, and that's where we come into play. Actually, Azerbaijan has been putting all its efforts to modernize the fundamentals of all this different pieces that you have mentioned. Like when you're talking about the startup ecosystem, we don't talk about just startups, it's also universities, it's also institutions, the different stakeholders that are all involved. So we worked closely with different universities, and the universities in Azerbaijan, all of them have these incubation centers where they let students who are interested in entrepreneurship and just to come in and to work on their projects. Actually, that project is mostly managed by our sister company called Next Step Innovation Center, which is specialized in incubation process of startups. As a sub-VC, we are mostly involved in getting startups into global scale by helping them through acceleration programs, through investment and stuff like that. But as an incubation center, our sister company is working closely, mostly with the universities, and trying to help them create an environment where students can come and start working on their ideas.
Okay. So Pavel, I'd be curious also on the sort of the human capital side, your perspective on what's going on in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, the complex approach, it's also in place here since the primary school children's now involved into project-based learning and also some coding, the gamification way since first grade. So today we now, as the organization, national institution for development of ICT, we are looking on the last mile of that education, of professional education. We believe that the university education can be more democratized, and we can get the real great human resources out of the universities much faster than we usually have after 4 years of bachelor degrees. But at the same time, it's a great room for development, some modern educational approach. So we were partnering with 01 educational system from France, Nicolas Sadirac, just to launch the unique peer-to-peer learning coding school here in Nur Sultan, and also the one is launching soon in Almaty, which provides vocational trainings for any individuals from 16 up to like 65 years old, just to get the new specialization that now much needed in market, and it shows fantastic results. So the model can prepare the full stack kind of programmer in 1.5 years. So of course the classical kind of barriers and some cultural legacy that we still sticking to, it's just to have a state approved diploma from the university is still much needed from the elder generation, from their children. But if we go beyond that feeling and attachment, it's we don't need so much resources wasted in order to prepare the good expert and a good junior programmer. So that's the requires to prepare the good experts. It's need more agility and more flexibility from the classical education system, and of course this should be goes in a partnership with the private market. We have a very developed community of EdTech entrepreneurs and the enthusiasts of education and the transformation of education. It shows some fruits at the moment, and I believe in the near future it can give even more results in terms of number of people with equipped with a new knowledge and new education. But in a nutshell, it requires a lot of flexibility from the very old classical system.
I mean, all of you have talked about, what I would consider various skill sets, in the sense of there's a coding skill set, there's a design skill set, there's a problem solving skill set. But one of the things that I personally have seen in our work around the world is, there is also an entrepreneurial mindset there's sort of an entrepreneurial way of seeing and thinking and being in the world. And I'm curious, you know, and any of you can answer this. I'm curious as to what you see as sort of the state of the entrepreneurial mindset. And I want to make a distinction, because the Kauffman Foundation, you know, a number of years ago sort of made an interesting distinction in terms of there's multiple kinds of entrepreneurs. You know, their core distinction was there are what they call lifestyle entrepreneurs, who are people who are starting a business, starting something because they want a better life. They want a comfortable lifestyle. They want good schools for the kids, you know, all of those kinds of things. And the Kauffman Foundation distinguished it from what they called enterprise entrepreneurs, who are people who are setting out, their motivation is I want to go, you know, I want to go build a really big business. And we see in a lot of emerging and what, you know, Pavel called sort of frontier ecosystems, there's a lot of sort of lifestyle entrepreneurship, and that's deeply rooted going back to trading culture, but not so much the enterprise entrepreneurship. And I'd be curious, you know, are you seeing that shift in your countries? And very specifically, are there things that you're doing to try to promote that mindset shift? Anna, you came off mute, so
yes,
you know,
I can probably start with that. Yes, I guess we are also doing something to promote. We call it value-added startups, and it also relates to the productivity issue. It's one thing when you have the model, which is absolutely fine, having 1,000 people in place working for a specific market, or you can have 10, 20 creative people. And this is probably what you were mentioning on taking upon the risks and developing and how do you do. So we do try to encourage that kind of companies or people, individuals, I would say, or teams, because it's not possible to do it alone. You always have to have a team, most probably. And also it's really important to understand that the team with different backgrounds is important for a startup. So whenever we are some of the programs that we are launching and doing is we do startup clubs, we do demo days, we do hackathons, we support hackathons, we support community initiatives, we do acceleration programs, we support we actually also supported the first business angel network to kind of try to pass on the knowledge to potential other entrepreneurs and get into the role of friends, family fools, and angel investors, or so on. So we are trying to do that, and I must say that 5 or even 5 years ago, you could name only, I don't know, 10 up to 10 startups of over 120. It's not enough still, but we see the rise and the positioning of more product development, value added, even serial entrepreneurs, some of them, where they have this mindset of being independent, doing what they like, trying to fit into the global picture. So yeah, probably that.
Pavel, Vusal, either of you have a thought on this topic?
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much, Chris. Actually, yes, the lifestyle entrepreneurship. That's what I was actually mentioning before. By not even saying its name. Yes, lifestyle entrepreneurship is very relevant to Azerbaijan. That's what we have seen for many years. But this enterprise entrepreneurial mindset is something that requires a lot of elements to put into it in order to create some kind of environment for people to actually think big. From the first day on, as Sub Accelerator, our focus was just to work with startups that have ambitions to scale globally, and not just like a local copycats of some kind of startup. So we never worked with the local copycats. We don't really believe in this system, but it's really hard to find people who have this kind of mindset. I guess one of the problems that we see in entrepreneurs is that they don't really have this confidence that they think that they can create something really, really big. So that's something that we are working on. As Anna mentioned, we besides being an accelerator program, we also work with the local ecosystem. We also identify ourselves as ecosystem builders. We do a lot of hackathons. We do, we brought different kind of brands to Azerbaijan so that people can learn from this international experience and connect themselves and change their mindset. I mean, I guess it all starts with the mindset, with the right mindset and with the right environment. So that we have to create some kind of environment where people can come together and meet like-minded people and start working on like problems that really matter, not just locally but globally. So I think the problem with this, the last pandemic, I think that this accelerated this kind of process, not just in Azerbaijan, but all over the world. So physical locations do not really matter anymore. We are more connected to different parts. People are more online. So I think this process will accelerate by time. And we as SupVC, we try to also contribute to this mindset as SupVC and try to work with local ecosystem and try to help them not just think locally, but try to have some kind of confidence and try to challenge the status quo and work on problems that really matter.
Yeah, Pavel, you want to jump in with anything?
Sure. Let's go back to the startup genome. And when we first did our evaluation and we realized and found ourselves in early stage kind of ecosystem, and the very obvious the goal at that level is just to keep going and increase the number of startups. When the numbers just reach the certain level, then it turns to the quality. And for today, yeah, the lifestyle and startups and companies, they might be not the number one type of startup that comes up in the mind when you're talking about the global and the scalable, but and it's not necessarily have to be the super innovative company. So it just recently also relates to the Kaspi case. They bought company from one of our local founders, Ashat. The company name was Santufei. He got a good exit from the travel startup, and now the Kaspi's ecosystem benefited from the team that they acquired. But also the Ashat now, the rich guy with a new Tesla, with all that nice fancy thing that he's showing off in Instagram or Facebook, that creates much more interest to that's example. So, and of course, it's a very simple things in the beginning, just to catch the attention from the people. And if we want to pour more and more people and resources into the innovative ecosystem, we need to motivate them. And in a TikTok world, and I mean very short-term kind of focus era, we have to do in a very straightforward thing. And then he's a greatest example that I can bring to the table, because he's not only chilling now, but he founded the second startup that now become entered the new batch of Y Combinator. So that's the greatest example of like story that might happen in Silicon Valley, but it already happened in Kazakhstan. And if we can show more stories like this one from Azerbaijan, from Georgia, from Uzbekistan, it brings much more brilliant people to that specific direction. Because on another hand, we always have much more things to do instead of doing tech startups. That's another story comes to my mind. One of our musicians, DJ from Kazakhstan, he recently got the Grammy Award for his remix. And now it's okay, booming, and a lot of young people now thinking of, okay, maybe startup is not such a great idea. Well, let's go to music. Yeah, but there is something in between, right? So that we still need to fight for the interest of talented people and then reroute them to the tech.
Yeah. I mean, this idea of role models, I'm really big on. That you need to have, particularly in smaller markets, in smaller ecosystems, you really need to have those role models who the other people can look at and say, I can do that, you know, or, you know, and it also comes back to this idea of belief. I don't remember, one of you talked about the importance of belief. It's they've got to believe that they can do it. And if they have seen someone do it successfully, it's easier to believe that you can do it if somebody has done it, you know, if somebody has done it before you. I do want to take a big turn here for just a moment and to satisfy my own curiosity. You know, one of the challenges that we see in a lot of different places is that the regulatory environment is not especially kind to startups. You know, we see everything from the time, cost, and expense of creating an actual company. You know, there's, you know, paid-in capital requirements, you know, all kinds of expenses. We see bankruptcy laws being an impediment. We see IP protection issues and so forth. And I was just curious from each of you, if you could just, like, in 2 minutes, just sort of give like the good, the bad, and the ugly of the regulatory environment in your respective countries.
If I may start again.
Sure, we just keep going.
Yeah, we just keep going round. So related to the environment and to supporting startups, although we have things that we are looking for to improve, such as the law on venture funds and investment capital and stuff like that. Moldova benefits of a 7% flat tax rate for any kind of IT business, which means that it pays 7% and that's it, out of its turnover. It could be questionable whether it's good or bad for startups, but this is quite an encouraging and probably one of the best options overall existing by now in the region. This regime is under a special virtual IT park, which is called Moldova IT Park currently, with about 700 companies under it. If we are speaking from the perspective of supporting startups or opening a company, it's quite easy to open a company in Moldova. It's really easy to open a company in Moldova. It's much more difficult to close a company in Moldova. So I guess that would be our question. In the doing business report provided by the World Bank, we are constantly well positioned on the opening a company, but the closing is still kind of big of a hassle. Number 3, you mentioned, we also have a law that we are promoting now and heavily working on, relating to the providing a digital innovation fund for startups. So trying to support also financially the risks of those startups. And number 4, probably when we're talking about the fintech or trying to work with this kind of startups, we are promoting the use of sandboxes in the legislation where they can try without being required to get licenses and stuff like that. We are still not yet there, and that's why we need to be, or the startups need to be careful. It's not that difficult to open. So as I mentioned, it's more what's the market, how do you position yourself, how do you get used to the, or you get used to of the external opportunities, and how do you connect. So I would probably, I've mentioned what is good and what needs to be worked on, and also if we are looking on the Moldovan perspective, the connection to international monetary services is also very important, because usually a startup, I don't know how it happens in Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan or other countries, but a startup in Moldova usually has a division in Moldova and probably a division somewhere in the US. And that's the question, how do you usually play with that? So for us, it's really important to encourage more to appear, but also need to take into consideration that all these synergies need to happen.
Vusal.
Yes, when it comes to Azerbaijan, actually one of the things that is like one of the progresses that's made in terms of regulatory issues is that a special government agency was established, called Innovation Agency, which will only focus on these regulatory issues and try to make create some kind of favorable environment for startups to be created and to grow. One of the greatest things that's been done so far is that they're working on a thing called a startup certificate, which actually will enable all the startups to be to have a tax exemptions for 2 years and not to pay any kind of tax once they are in business. But the challenges that we are seeing right now is that there's a lot of things that needs to be done in order to create some kind of legal environment for international venture capital firms to actually come and establish their grounds here in Azerbaijan and start investing in local startups. Because in terms of legal and regulatory issues, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Actually, for the last 1 year, I know that there's much of the things have been done, but still there needs to be, some kind of things there needs to be adopted. Some new resolutions needs to be adopted. But hopefully, starting from next year, we will see a lot of progress in this issue as well.
So Pavel.
Sorry, I probably missed the question.
Just we were talking a little bit about sort of like regulatory environment, and that in a lot of countries, there are still regulatory issues around company, expense of company formation, trouble in shutting the company down, bankruptcy law, law, investment law, and was just curious as to sort of really quickly your take on the state of affairs, in that regulatory sense.
Sure. So I think in terms of like modern approach, when everybody starts doing these e-residencies and like nomad visas and so on and so forth, when the countries as the platforms actually compete with each other for the promising startups, and of course it's no doubt it's a prerequisite to have low red tapes and all these requirements to set up and operate a business. And it's still pity when in a such and now it's not the case of the nation state, but sometimes it's the issue of the local misinterpretations and misusage. For example, Kazakhstan is still a great place in terms of World Bank doing business ratings and reports, but I'm not telling kind of just the propaganda that everything is brilliant here. But for example, if you go to some regions of Kazakhstan and set up a company, IT companies there, even though you are part of extraterritorial special tax regime of Astana Hub, it's still might be cases when the tax inspector came to you and start asking a question or not receiving your tax reports and telling that you have mistake here, but actually there is no mistake because he's just not educated enough. So that's a lot of cases here, and the pressure for the many countries, it's there is some much advanced environment for that. In our region, Georgia shows enormous examples in terms of like easiness of doing such things, and of course we compete with them. When we introduced our tax incentives, we were pointing at Belarus as a great example. Okay, in Belarus, all these IT companies pays zero to the government, and of course, yeah, that's how it's possible today to lowering down that barriers.
Great. Well, there is so much that we could talk about, but you know we're right at the hour, and you know, for me at least, this has been incredibly informative. I've enjoyed chatting and look forward to staying in touch with all of you and talking more one-on-one, and perhaps StrategEast will, you know, pull together another session where some or all of us can continue the conversation. I want to thank you for your willingness to participate and contribute not just to the development, you know, that you've been doing in your own country, but to share your experiences and your knowledge with a broader community. And so just thank you very much. And thank you to the audience who's listened to us chatter on for the last hour. And just, as I said, look forward to continuing the dialogue here and in other places with you. Thank you again.